Welcome to your deep dive. So, looks like you're ready to level up your critical thinking skills, huh? Especially for problem solving and making those tough decisions.
You got it.
And you sent over a great video titled Critical Thinking Mastery. Transform your mindset. This is going to be an awesome deep dive.
Definitely is.
Hmm.
We'll go beyond just, defining critical thinking. We'll really dig into why it's so important in a world that's just flooded with information.
Right. It seems like everyone has a different opinion these days, and the video mentions that critical thinking's like building mental muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
It is a fantastic analogy, and it really highlights how critical thinking isn't some, elite skill you're born with.
Right.
Anyone can develop it. It's all about training your mind to analyze information, objectively, consider all those different angles, and make those well-reasoned decisions.
That makes a lot of sense. So where do we even begin? The video starts by debunking some common myths. Like a lot of people think critical thinking is just about being argumentative or overly critical, or that it's some innate talent, something you're just born with.
Exactly. And the video really stresses that it's about approaching situations with genuine curiosity, an open mind.
Okay.
It's more about uncovering the truth, gaining clarity, than winning arguments.
So it's less about being a debater and more about self-reflection, understanding how your own thoughts work.
Absolutely. The video goes deep on self-awareness as the foundation for critical thinking. It's understanding your own biases, those ingrained thought patterns, and how your own experiences shape the way you see the world.
So before you even make a big decision, it's like you're taking inventory of all that mental baggage you might be carrying around.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. If you're not aware of your biases, then you could be making decisions based on, flawed information or unexamined assumptions. It's like playing a game without even knowing all the rules.
And speaking of games, the video uses this really interesting analogy for cognitive biases. It says they're like invisible chess pieces influencing your decisions without you even realizing it.
It's a brilliant way to visualize it. Cognitive biases are those mental shortcuts our brains take to kind of simplify information.
Right.
But if you're not aware of them, they can really trip you up.
Yeah.
Like, let's take confirmation bias, for instance. This is where you tend to favor information that already aligns with your existing beliefs.
It's almost like we're cherry picking information to kind of fit those preconceived notions. So if someone already believes that a certain political party is always wrong, they're more likely to seek out, news sources that confirm that bias, even if it means getting skewed perspective.
It's a perfect example of how confirmation bias plays out in the real world. It's incredibly common, and it can be incredibly difficult to recognize in ourselves. And then there's the availability heuristic, where we tend to overestimate the likelihood of events that are, easily recalled, vivid in our memories.
Oh, like everyone's fear of flying.
Yeah.
Even though statistically it's much safer than driving, but plane crashes get so much media attention, those images become really, really available in our mind.
Exactly. The availability heuristic is often fueled by, sensationalized media coverage.
Right.
It makes things seem more common or dangerous than they actually are.
Okay, so we've established that self-awareness and understanding our biases are crucial for developing these critical thinking skills. So how do we actually cultivate this self-awareness? And the video mentions some practical steps we can take.
Yeah, the video recommends two key practices, mindfulness and reflective journaling. Mindfulness is all about training your mind to focus on the present moment. You become aware of your thoughts and emotions without judgment, kind of like a mental observer.
Mm-hmm.
This helps you identify those automatic thought patterns and emotional triggers that might be influencing your decisions.
So it's like hitting the pause button on your thoughts and just observing them as they come and go.
Exactly. And reflective journaling, it takes us as a step further. It's about putting those thoughts and observations down on paper. By writing down your experiences, your reactions, your thought processes, during that decision-making, you're creating a tangible record.
Okay.
And that can reveal hidden patterns and biases that you might not have noticed otherwise.
It's like becoming a detective of your own mind.
That's a great way to put it. Uncovering those hidden clues about how your thinking really works. The better you understand your own mental landscape, the better equipped you are to navigate the world and make sound judgments.
That makes a lot of sense. So we've covered self-awareness and recognizing our biases. What are some of those core skills of critical thinking itself?
The video really highlights logical reasoning and evidence-based thinking as those essential cornerstones.
Hmm.
It's about learning to construct um, solid arguments, spot those sneaky errors in reasoning called logical fallacies, and relying on evidence instead of emotions or opinions when you're forming your own conclusions.
So basically, it's about building a strong mental framework that can, like, withstand scrutiny. It's not just about having opinions, but being able to back them up.
Exactly. And the video uses the classic example of a syllogism to illustrate logical reasoning. It's a type of argument with a major premise, a minor premise, and a conclusion.
You mean like all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal.
That's the one. If the premises are true, the conclusion has to logically follow. But how do you apply this kind of logical reasoning to real-life situations that are much more complex?
Right, because the things are rarely that straightforward. It feels like people are always trying to convince you of something, and sometimes those arguments are, they sound really convincing even if they're not actually logical.
You're absolutely right. And that's why it's so important to develop those critical thinking skills, to break down arguments, examine the evidence, and look for flaws in the reasoning.
Right.
The video encourages us to become familiar with common logical fallacies.
Those are those deceptive arguments that sound good on the surface but like fall apart when you look closer.
Exactly. And there are so many of them out there. Like the ad hominem attack, where someone tries to discredit an argument by attacking the person making it, rather than addressing the argument itself.
Oh, so instead of debating the idea, you just attack the person.
Right. It's a distraction tactic. And then there's the false dichotomy, where a situation is presented as having only two options, when there might be other possibilities. It's like saying, you're either with us or you're against us, when there might be a whole spectrum of viewpoints in between.
It sounds like we need to be pretty vigilant thinkers to avoid being, like, misled by these tactics. It's like you need a mental toolkit to spot those red flags in an argument.
You got it. But it's not just about spotting fallacies. Evidence-based thinking is also crucial. It's about grounding your conclusions in verifiable facts and data, not just opinions or beliefs.
So instead of blindly believing what you hear, you seek out those credible sources of information and are open to changing your mind if new evidence challenges those views. Kind of like being a good scientist, right?
That's a great comparison. A good scientist is always testing their hypotheses, refining their understanding based on new discoveries. Critical thinking requires that same level of skepticism and a willingness to question assumptions, even your own.
That takes a lot of humility to admit you might be wrong and adjust your beliefs based on new information.
It does. But it's a key part of growth, both intellectually and personally. And this ties back into that idea of developing a growth mindset, which the video emphasizes is so important for critical thinking.
A growth mindset is that belief that your abilities and intelligence can be developed through effort and learning.
Exactly. It allows you to see challenges as opportunities for growth and failures as valuable feedback.
So we've laid a really solid foundation for understanding what critical thinking is and why it's so crucial, but how do we actually apply these skills in real-life situations, especially when we're faced with those tough problems or those important decisions?
That's a great question, and that's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore specific techniques for problem solving and decision making, using those core critical thinking principles to navigate tricky situations with confidence.
Seems like we're going to level up our critical thinking game even further. I'm ready when you are.
Welcome back. You ready to put those critical thinking skills to work and tackle some real world problems?
Absolutely. In the last part, we laid a lot of groundwork. Now let's get practical. The video compares a complex problem to a giant, tangled knot. What's the first step to untangling that mess?
Well, it might sound simple, but the first step is to break that massive knot down into smaller, more manageable threads.
Oh.
The video calls this problem decomposition.
So it's like taking that overwhelming problem and dissecting it into like bite-sized pieces.
That's a great way to think about it. By isolating the individual components of a problem, you gain a much clearer understanding of the root causes and potential solutions. It's a bit like a detective, meticulously piecing together clues.
Okay. So we've untangled that knot a bit. What's next? Do we just jump into like finding solutions?
Not so fast. The video stresses the importance of gathering as much relevant information as possible before you even start, brainstorming solutions.
That makes sense. You wouldn't want to start prescribing remedies before you've properly diagnosed the problem, like a doctor rushing to surgery without looking at your test results, right?
Exactly. This is where critical thinking and curiosity really come into play. You need to consider different perspectives, consult experts if necessary, and look for any patterns or trends that might shed light on the situation.
So you're not just relying on your own limited knowledge. You're becoming an investigator, gathering evidence from as many sources as possible before drawing any conclusions.
Precisely. Once you have a solid understanding of the problem and all the information at hand, then it's time to move on to brainstorming potential solutions.
Ah, brainstorming. That's where we get to be creative, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The video encourages us to suspend judgment during this phase. Let those ideas flow freely, no matter how unconventional or out there they might seem.
Right.
Sometimes those wild ideas can spark the most innovative solutions.
I like that. No idea is a bad idea at this stage. So we've got our problem broken down, our information gathered, and our brainstorming sessions complete. Now we've got a whole bunch of potential solutions. How do we pick the best one?
This is where those analytical skills we discussed earlier come back into play.
Okay.
The video recommends weighing the pros and cons of each potential solution. Consider its feasibility, potential outcomes, both positive and negative, and any unintended consequences.
So it's like taking each solution and putting it under a magnifying glass, examining it from every angle.
That's a great way to visualize it. And remember, objectivity is key. Try to set aside personal preferences or biases that might cloud your judgment during this evaluation stage.
It's so easy to get attached to an idea, especially if you came up with it yourself. But sometimes you have to be willing to let go if it's, not the best option for the situation. The video also mentions the idea of reframing the problem.
Reframing can be incredibly powerful. Sometimes the way we initially define a problem can actually limit our ability to find effective solutions.
Okay.
By shifting our perspective, we can often discover innovative approaches that we hadn't even considered before.
It's like looking at the problem through a different lens. Maybe you were focusing on the wrong aspect of the situation or making assumptions that weren't actually true.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that the problem solving is rarely a linear process. It can be messy and iterative. Don't be afraid to go back and forth between these steps, refining your understanding of the problem, gathering more information, or even revisiting potential solutions that you might have initially discarded.
It sounds like flexibility and persistence are key. But what about those times when you hit a wall and you feel stuck? That feeling of being completely overwhelmed by a problem.
The video acknowledges that feeling stuck is a completely normal part of the problem-solving process.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best thing you can do is just take a step back, give yourself some mental space, or even seek input from others who might have a fresh perspective.
It's like taking a deep breath and allowing yourself to see the problem with new eyes. Sometimes you just need that distance to gain that clarity.
That's a great analogy. Problem-solving is often a journey, not a destination. Embrace the process. Learn from those inevitable stumbles along the way, and remember that persistence usually pays off in the end.
This has been incredibly helpful in understanding how to approach problem solving with a critical thinking mindset. But let's not forget about those big life decisions we all face.
Right.
What guidance does the video offer for making those tough calls?
Well, the video uses a powerful metaphor to describe those high-stakes decisions. It compares it to standing at a crossroads with multiple paths representing different choices, all shrouded in a dense fog of uncertainty.
Oh, I know that feeling. It's that sense of being overwhelmed by all the possibilities and not knowing which path to choose, especially when the outcome is uncertain.
It's a universal experience. And the video emphasizes that effective decision-making, just like problem-solving, it's a process.
Okay.
It starts with clearly defining the decision that needs to be made and gathering all the relevant information you can.
So once again, we're laying the groundwork, doing our research before we even think about making a choice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's tempting to just jump right in, but that can lead to impulsive decisions that you later regret. Once you have a clear understanding of the decision and the information available, you can start identifying and evaluating your options.
Okay, so we've defined the decision, gathered our information, and brainstormed our options. What's the best way to evaluate those options and actually make a choice? It still feels kind of overwhelming.
The video suggests considering both the short-term and long-term consequences of each option, Ask yourself, what are the potential risks and benefits? How do these options align with your values and long-term goals?
So it's not just about the immediate impact, but also like thinking about those potential ripple effects down the line.
Precisely.
Hmm.
And don't be afraid to think outside the box. Sometimes the best solution isn't the most obvious one.
Right.
Explore creative alternatives and be open to unexpected possibilities.
The video also talks about balancing logic and intuition, which seems kind of tricky. How do you do that?
It's a delicate dance. While it's crucial to analyze the facts and figures, don't discount that gut feeling.
Right.
Intuition is often a form of subconscious pattern recognition based on your past experiences.
Hmm.
The key is to find a harmonious balance between those analytical and intuitive forces.
It's like using both your head and your heart to guide your decisions.
Beautifully put. But even with the most thorough analysis, there's often still an element of uncertainty when it comes to making decisions.
Uncertainty can be so paralyzing. How do we manage that?
The video recommends scenario planning as a way to deal with those unknowns. This involves imagining different possible futures and considering how your decision might play out in each scenario. It helps you anticipate potential challenges and opportunities so you can develop contingency plans.
So it's almost like running mental simulations to prepare yourself for different possibilities.
That's exactly right. It's a powerful technique, and it's important to remember that decision-making isn't about eliminating all risk. It's it's about making informed choices that align with your values and goals, even when the outcome is uncertain.
Okay, so we've talked about problem solving and decision making, but life throws curveballs all the time. How does critical thinking help us deal with those inevitable challenges and setbacks? It can't all be smooth sailing, right?
That's where mental resilience comes in. The video compares mental resilience to a mighty oak tree weathering a fierce storm. It's about developing that inner strength to bend without breaking, to bounce back from adversity, and to emerge from those difficult experiences even stronger.
That's such a powerful image. It makes me think of like those trees that have been like shaped and twisted by years of wind and storms. They're not perfect, but they're strong and resilient. Is mental resilience something we're born with, or is it something we can develop?
The video emphasizes that mental resilience, just like critical thinking itself, is a learnable skill. And it starts with understanding and managing your emotions.
So it's not about ignoring or suppressing your emotions, but about learning to like process them effectively and not letting them control your actions.
You got it. The video actually highlights emotional intelligence as a key component of mental resilience.
Okay.
It's about recognizing, understanding, and managing your emotions in a healthy way so that they don't, hijack your decision making or cloud your judgment.
Are there specific practices that can help us cultivate this emotional intelligence?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mindfulness meditation is one powerful technique the video mentions.
Okay.
By practicing mindfulness, you learn to observe your thoughts and emotions without judgment.
Right.
It gives you that pause button we talked about earlier, creating a space between your emotions and your reactions.
So instead of reacting impulsively, you have a moment to choose a more thoughtful response.
Exactly. And another crucial aspect of mental resilience is developing that growth mindset we talked about earlier.
That's the belief that your abilities and intelligence can be developed through effort and learning. It's about embracing challenges and seeing failures as opportunities to grow.
Exactly. A growth mindset allows you to view those inevitable setbacks not as, personal defeats, but as stepping stones on the path to learning and improvement.
It's about shifting your perspective from like I can't do this to I can't do this yet, but I'm willing to learn.
That's a great way to frame it.
Right.
And the video reminds us that developing a growth mindset is essential not just for building resilience, but for critical thinking as a whole.
Right.
It's about embracing that continuous journey of learning, adapting, and evolving your thinking throughout your life.
This deep dive has been amazing. We've covered so much ground, from understanding our own biases to developing those problem-solving and decision-making skills, and now cultivating mental resilience.
It's been quite a journey, but we're not quite finished yet.
Oh,
There's one more crucial aspect of critical thinking that we need to explore. Engaging with diverse perspectives.
Yeah.
And that's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive.
I can't wait to dive into that. It seems especially relevant in today's world where we're constantly bombarded with so much information and opinions from all sides. It's easy to feel lost in the noise.
Absolutely. Learning to navigate that complex landscape of perspectives
Hmm.
is is an essential skill for any critical thinker.
We've covered so much in this deep dive already, like all those sneaky cognitive biases and how to tackle tough problems and make big decisions. But there's one final piece, and
Mm.
it feels super relevant right now, engaging with different perspectives.
Yeah, you're right. It's crucial for critical thinking, especially in a world that, feels more and more divided. The video uses this great analogy. It compares different perspectives to like a room with walls painted in all these different colors. And as you move around the room, you see how the colors interact, creating new shades, new combinations, and it really enriches your understanding of the whole space.
That's such a cool image. It makes you think like how limiting it can be to just stay in our own little echo chambers,
Right.
surrounded by people who think exactly like us. We miss out on all those nuances and complexities that come from encountering different ways of thinking.
Exactly. And the video emphasizes that, yeah, encountering different perspectives can be tough, but ultimately it helps us grow as thinkers.
Hmm.
It challenges those assumptions, broadens our understanding, and often leads to better, more innovative solutions, especially for those complex problems.
So it's not about abandoning your own beliefs, but like expanding your horizons, considering different ways of looking at the world, like stepping outside your comfort zone and realizing there's a whole universe of ideas out there you might never have even thought about.
Absolutely. It's
Hmm.
like adding new colors to your palette as a painter.
Right.
It lets you create a much richer, more nuanced representation of reality.
That makes sense. But I know it can be hard to actually put that into practice.
Hmm.
How do you really engage with perspectives that might challenge your deepest beliefs?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to say you're open to diverse viewpoints, but it's much harder to actually do it,
Mm.
especially when those viewpoints, make you feel uncomfortable or challenged.
Definitely.
It takes effort. It takes being intentional. The video has a few practical strategies that I think are really helpful. One is to actively seek out those sources of information that challenge your views.
Okay.
So, for example, if you typically read, liberal publications, try exploring, conservative ones and vice versa.
So it's like deliberately exposing yourself to different ways of thinking, even if it makes you a little uncomfortable, like a mental workout.
Exactly. The goal isn't to change your mind on every single issue, but to develop a deeper understanding of why people hold the beliefs they do.
Okay.
Like, what are their experiences that have shaped their views? What are the arguments that they use to support their perspective? It's about understanding that why behind the what.
It reminds me of that saying, you can't understand someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes.
Yeah, that's a perfect analogy. And this leads to another key strategy the video really emphasizes: active listening.
Okay.
When you're engaging with someone who holds a different view, it's about really hearing what they're saying, not just, waiting for your turn to speak or formulating your rebuttal in your
So
head.
you're listening to actually understand, not just to respond. It's about being curious, not combative.
Exactly. And it's about, asking clarifying questions, trying to understand the reasoning and the experiences that have shaped their viewpoints. It's it's a lot harder to dismiss someone's perspective when you genuinely get where they're coming from.
It makes you realize that people rarely hold beliefs that they think are wrong or harmful. They're usually trying to make sense of the world based on, their own experiences and what they've been exposed to. The video also talks about the importance of building empathy.
Yeah, empathy is so crucial for bridging those divides between perspectives. It's about putting yourself in someone else's shoes, trying to see the world through their eyes, even if you don't agree with their, conclusions.
I can see how that'd be challenging, especially when dealing with viewpoints that feel completely foreign or even offensive to your own.
It can be really, really difficult.
Mm.
But the video reminds us that, most people, regardless of their beliefs, are trying to do what they think is right, based on their own understanding and experiences. Finding that common ground, that shared humanity, it can make those tough conversations a bit easier.
It's about recognizing that, we're all on this journey of trying to figure things out and we're going to have different perspectives. The video talks about a technique called steel manning, which sounds interesting.
Steel manning, yeah, it's a really powerful tool for engaging with different perspectives. It's the opposite of straw manning,
Yeah.
where you attack a weak or exaggerated version of someone's argument just to make it easier to, knock down.
Oh, yeah, straw man arguments are everywhere, especially
They-
online.
Right.
It's so easy to misrepresent someone's viewpoint to make your own look better.
Exactly. But with skill manning, you do the opposite. You try to articulate the strongest possible version of their argument, even if you ultimately disagree with it.
So you're like trying to find the intellectual merit in an opposing viewpoint, even if you don't fully buy into it yourself.
That's the idea.
Mm.
It's a way of showing you're genuinely trying to understand their perspective.
Yeah.
And it can actually strengthen your own critical thinking
Oh,
because it forces you to engage with the most robust version of their argument.
wow, that sounds challenging, but also incredibly valuable. It's like taking your like mental sparring to the next level.
It really is. And it's a skill that takes practice, but it can be so rewarding both intellectually and personally. It can help you build better relationships, have more productive conversations, and even come up with more creative solutions to problems.
This whole deep dive has just been like a total eye-opener. We covered so much. Understanding those biases, becoming better problem solvers and decision makers, and now this, embracing the power of different perspectives. I feel like I have this whole new set of tools to navigate the world with more clarity, more confidence.
It's been an amazing journey. And remember, critical thinking is it's a lifelong thing.
Mm.
It's not about reaching some final destination, but about continuously learning, adapting, and evolving the way you think.
I love that. It's not a finish line, it's an ongoing adventure. And here's something for our listeners to think about as they continue. How could embracing this critical thinking mindset impact their relationships, their work, even their overall well-being? It seems like the possibilities are just endless.
It's a great question to consider. And on that note, we'll leave you to keep exploring this awesome world of critical thinking. Happy thinking!